This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
You are tuned in to the Foul Weather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
With turkey seasons open across the South and turkeys starting to strut their stuff all the way to Canada, there is no better time to talk turkeys. What do the experts have in common? How do they tag out wherever they go? Also, we tackle a tough one in this bonus episode. Why are turkeys tanking, including a hypothesis that my own lab at ESF has started to tackle. Is it habitat? Is it predators? Is it disease? Is it weather? Is it all of the above simply tied together by genetic bottlenecks? Find out the secrets to the hunt and why turkeys are tanking. All today on this special turkey season bonus episode on the Foul Weather Podcast. Let's start out by jumping into why some turkey hunters are more successful than others. Some of this information comes from Adam Butler, the turkey program coordinator for the state of Mississippi. My own experience suggests much of this is true that Adam states. Look, I've been a turkey hunting fool my entire life, but not until I'd say my late 20s or early 30s did it all come together. At the end of the day, it very often comes down to how many days you can go in a row to understand the bird's patterns and find a place he wants to be, so you can get that old Tom to cooperate. The most successful turkey hunters will often bag a bird by their third hunt or about the fifth turkey that they've heard gobbling. When I was in Mississippi for the 2009 and 2010 turkey seasons, I tagged out with my 3 birds in 11 days the first year and 9 days the second year, all on public lands. The guys at Mississippi State University that I worked with thought the first year was a fluke or just some random chance. But the second year, when I tagged out even quicker, the comments were fun. Like, go back home to New York now, kid. Anyhow, successful hunters typically have multiple private properties to hunt, simply because you can hunt non-pressured turkeys and know that nobody else killed your bird before you did or got out there on the same day. Another one is know how to run and gun, which I can attest to as that is my style. I'll take it one step farther, is that if you can use terrain to get within 100 yards of a gobbling bird before sitting down, your chances go up drastically of him moving that little bit more to get shot. One I found interesting with those data from Adam Butler was that successful turkey hunters tend to use non-traditional calls like wingbone calls. I don't think it's because these calls are any better than mouth, box, or slate calls, but the user is probably just trying new things because they've done it all before with the traditional calls. So probably not a thing that those calls sound any more like a turkey, but more of just a fun aspect from the seasoned hunter to try out something new. One I didn't care for that supposedly is an attribute of more successful hunters because I try to shoot all my birds within 30 yards, but successful hunters need to at least be comfortable shooting over 50 yards. I guess that's just because a lot of old Toms will hang up on you and it might be the only way to get them or get them earlier on, right? But by far, the most important aspect noted, and I believe in this, is having the correct setup. So often when I'm running and gunning, a bird gobbles. Then I move to get into range, but end up in a spot that is not ideal. If I know the terrain and the placement of shrubbery areas, blowdowns, and other things that make a turkey survive that calling duel back and forth between us, then I have a lot better chance of not getting pinned and hopefully harvesting that bird. This is why scouting and going back day after day helps. You learn the landscape quite well and hopefully don't get in a bad spot. Very often you search for the right setup. Maybe with 2 people, you put the shooter about 20 to 30 yards ahead of you so they can get after the bird that would normally hang up, and so they're closer. But I've also found that very often the turkey hears me calling, right? And might come my way instead of towards the shooter. It doesn't follow the line to the shooter that we wanted. And then I found myself in a bad spot with no shot. So also make sure you place the shooter in a good lane, but also that the caller also makes sure they pick a reasonable backup shot spot. Of course, that's safe, not pointed towards the shooter out in front of you 20 to 30 yards. But so that you, as the caller with a shotgun, as long as you still got a tag left, also have a good setup so that you don't get pitched. So the setup is key. I'm not a blind and field edge person. I find it extremely boring to sit and wait with decoys out and let a bird finally show up in the morning and then snipe it at 60 yards. It's just not my style. Probably because I grew up with 6 square miles around my house as a kid, and all of it was big woods with ridges, benches, and ravines to run and gun working birds. One not listed by Adam was calling at the right time. The pattern is to get the gobbler to gobble at you, not you call at the gobbler. If you are calling at him after he gobbles, you are telling him, the hen, that you are coming to him. Remember, the mating system in turkeys is for hens to come to the gobblers, not the other way around, which is what we as hunters are trying to get him to do. So location and setup is key, but if you don't control the conversation, you just aren't ever going to see him at all, because y'all just keep telling him, here I come, every single time you call right back at him. Instead, try this if you have not. Once you get a gobble or a bird is gobbling on his own, okay, and this isn't perfect everywhere all the time, but this is a really go-to move for me, right? Once you get a gobble or a bird is gobbling on his own, move into position using terrain. Pick a spot where he doesn't have a long view to see way out. If he looks through the woods and doesn't see a hen, he's not going to come. Even if you have decoys, it still isn't moving, and he can still hang up. I use ravine edges and elevation benches to ensure that when he is in view, that he is already less than 40 yards away. But here is key. Once you've sat down, get your setup ready, and have caught your breath, call very lightly. And not just after he gobbled, right? If he gobbles, do not call back at him right away. Once he gobbles, at this point, count how many times or how long it takes him to gobble again. So if it was 30 seconds, about 30 seconds between gobbles, call at him at about 25 seconds after his last gobble and keep this going. Slowly moving it towards every time you call, he gobbles. If he comes in right away, great. That's not typical though, right? Instead, in all likelihood, he's going to sound loud, then quiet, then loud, then quiet. At this point, you know he's on a strut line, and maybe going to be tough to make him move. If this is the case, this is where I say get after it. At that 25-second mark, when he's sounding loud and closest to you on that strut line, start soft, and when he gobbles, cut him off. Make cuts, make yelps, crash leaves, cut and yelp, maybe even use a box call and a mouth call at the same time to sound like two different hens. If you can get him to gobble about 3 to 4 times in a row, you then just shut up for a long period of time. Let him gobble and gobble and gobble. This method very often moves him off that strut line and in your direction. At this point, if you did get within 100 yards of him and have terrain so he can't see you until he's at least 40 yards, get your gun up, especially if he goes really quiet, because he's likely on the move in your direction, not standing there gobbling, but walking at you if he gets quiet. Listen for leaves rustling as he walks or the drumming as he struts. Make sure and identify your target, right? That is, be safe and make sure it's a turkey when it comes into range. And also, if you have Jake restrictions, double check that it's a mature bird with a proper beard length and proper tail feathers, right? Then you just shoot straight and you've bagged your bird. Does it always work out like this? Heck no. But don't just call it a bird to get it to gobble. Control the conversation and switch the tables, making him come to you. Whew, cool stuff. I can't wait until our season here in New York starts in May, but hopefully I'm hunting in Mississippi in the coming weeks as well, so we'll let y'all know how it went in future episodes. Last on this topic, I want to express how safety is absolutely key. I always place my decoy off to the side a bit when hunting those breaks. It's simply meant to distract the bird for a bit if he comes up somewhere to my side and I have to swing my gun quickly so he's looking at the decoy instead of me. I don't use decoys for them to come a long distance to typically. But it also seems safer than having it directly in front of me if somehow a hunter popped over that edge. And if you hear a hen out there too, like if you're working a bird and you hear a hen, just consider it possible that that is another hunter, right? Run and gun is great on public land, but don't walk into another person's setup. And always identify your target. Take the time to identify your turkey. All right, so why are turkeys tanking? Populations of turkeys have plummeted across many parts of their range, whereas in other places they're still thriving. Even in New York, we find good numbers of turkey in some areas, but others where that you can't even raise a gobble in an entire morning. Lots of places, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Kansas, have recorded turkey declines. Other places don't have a great way to track the population, though, but information from hunters definitely indicates a decline. Why can't some states detect declines? Some of it, I think, is how information is collected, and not throwing anybody under a bus here. It's just places maybe for improvement, and it's just because I'm from New York. For instance, New York, the question when you report your turkey is, how many days did you hunt to kill this turkey? But that can't get at the effort or satisfaction with the turkey hunt. Once I got up on a ridge and could hear a half dozen birds gobble across the valley and maybe 2 or 3 on my side, I now may walk all day to find a single bird, and then I just focus on the bird. Heck, I used to walk. Here's another tip on how to kill turkeys. You can leave a turkey to kill a turkey. If you got one hanging up and you got another hot one a little ways away, go after the one that wants to die, right? That's how you kill birds quickly in a short period of time. Don't focus on the one in front of you always. If there's another one, go after it. But lots of times now, if I find a single turkey, I got to spend all day with it because it's the only one I'm at here all day. I also drive around and scout probably 3 times as much to even find turkeys prior to season. So on an opening day, if I kill a bird, I might report to New York that I hunted 10 days to kill that turkey. I'm not sure if those data get thrown out because legally that's not possible. I couldn't have been hunting before the season's open. But also think about it this way. I put in 28,000 steps last year on opening day and didn't kill a turkey. I didn't even hear a bird gobble. Wow. But if I did, that would be, if I had walked 28,000 steps on a day and did kill a turkey, that would be way different from hiking into a spot, getting a bunch of gobbles, and killing a bird by 7 a.m. The metrics to understand effort in turkey hunting vary by location, but they probably need to be collected in a more calculated manner. Because in New York, for instance, it is difficult to detect a decline in turkey hunter success in some places. But the effort going into it is great because the turkey population is now much lower. I have students that still kill birds every single year where they come from, where they live on their farms, but they have also noted that the population is at least half that it once was. Of course, these are anecdotal observations, but they seem to be adding up.
At Capella University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can even finish the bachelor's degree you started in 22 months for $20,000. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by pace, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
So what have we done to help? To help these falling populations? We've reduced fall seasons or eliminated them. We've cut back limits in spring. We've opened seasons later in the season. But we also need to know if any of this is actually helping. I don't know, but given that it is reducing opportunities, it seems like we should certainly be studying these aspects of the hunt and harvest of turkeys a bit more. Of course, many folks are, so don't take this as no one is doing anything. There's definitely good work out there going on. So what is the cause of turkey populations declining? I'll admit that this question has consumed my brain for some time, and I'm going to pose one hypothesis that is just starting to get attention. Our own lab at ESF started working on this topic about 3 years ago, and it also just got national attention when the Turkey DNA project kicked off. But 3 springs ago, we had a request out for turkey legs from hunters in New York on social media. If you donated a leg, thank you, because our initial work on turkey genetics is gathered and ready for development into scientific publications. But what does genetics have to do with turkey decline? How do we even start to go down this road? Interestingly, a student at ESF years ago conducted research on turkey pox, that disease that makes turkey heads look all warty and does sometimes kill them. At the end of that thesis was the entire trap and transfer history of New York turkeys. I grew up in Cattaraugus County in southwest New York, which was one of the original counties used as sources of turkeys for the rest of the state. These turkeys had started to move into New York from Pennsylvania, and biologists trap them, move them into other locales in New York, but also into other nearby counties. The same was happening in Delaware County, further east along the New York-Pennsylvania border, but what I noticed was interesting. It looked like a lot of turkey transfers throughout New York came from just those two counties. But what was even more interesting was that a few years later, it looked like folks were going back to the transfer county and moving turkeys again, maybe to the next county or a couple counties farther north. So I started to wonder how genetically diverse turkeys actually were in New York before the population started to crash in some places, right? The population in New York started to crash in some places about 30 years after the end of trap and transfer. Then I did what any good scientist does. I looked into turkey genetics research, published research, and found that what had been done in New York was called serial translocations. Loss of genetic diversity at predictable time steps can result from serial translocations, where translocated populations become the source for further translocations. For this reason, serial translocations are strongly cautioned against in most cases. Dispersal from trap locations can reduce the negative effect of serial translocations, but trap and transfer of family groups in wild turkeys is thought to result in less geographic dispersal than trap and transfer of unrelated individuals. Lots going on there. Then I started to look into turkey populations across the U.S. that were tanking and found they were happening at different times, but almost always about 20 to 30 years after the end of trap and transfers. This led me to the hypothesis that we did not properly obtain a genetically diverse enough group of turkeys to enable long-term sustained populations. That is, at some point they bottlenecked and lost genetic diversity. Okay, what does this mean? Think about it this way. This is an easy example, basically downscaled. With a highly outbred population of 10 turkeys, you might have 3 that are susceptible to landscape change of some sort, 3 that are susceptible to predation of certain types, 3 that are susceptible to heavy cold spring rains that reduce poult survival or nest success, and 1 that is susceptible to disease. So the likelihood of all those things happening at the same time are pretty low. And so you get heavy and cold spring rains, and 3 out of 10 of them don't make it, right? But if you sourced your population from the same genetic makeup and they're all susceptible to cold, wet springs, and you get a lot of cold, wet springs in a row, then you quickly see a crashing population from a complete loss of reproductive output because of reduced poult survival and nest success, right? This is simplified, but you see how it might not be any one of those factors, but rather the underlying issue of low genetic diversity that causes the population to crash, maybe from habitat loss, maybe from predators or disease or changes in weather. So rather than all types of expensive field studies, we first started by obtaining about 150 genetic samples by pulling tissue from turkey legs and feet that were voluntarily sent to us by hunters, and also through New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Fall Harvest Survey, which gets legs for age and sex ratio information. From this, we selected and had about 80 of those samples run properly. That is, we were able to recover DNA for use in this analysis. We thought we might see regional differences in inbreeding coefficients because we have different population trajectories across the state. Specifically, the last locations to get turkeys are still thriving. But what we found was the inbreeding coefficients were about the same across the state among regions, but that the population could basically be considered as all second cousins, right? Not good when your family tree doesn't branch much, and this was potentially because most of these turkeys came from just 2 counties by serial translocation. In fact, we had an undergraduate honor student do an analysis and geographic visualization of the turkey trap and transfers throughout time for New York, And it looks very likely that 100% of turkeys in 23 of 62 counties in New York came from just those 2 original counties. When we looked at the distribution of inbreeding coefficients, 42% of those samples were above 10%. For comparison, anything above 5% in humans is considered problematic. And as inbreeding coefficients increase in domestic turkeys, reproductive output declines because hatchability and viability of eggs declines. Overall, inbreeding depression is a known issue across animals, especially with translocated populations. And it is also possible that it can manifest itself further as populations decline, resulting in local extirpation vortices, or a local extirpation event. Whew. While nothing here is conclusive regarding wild turkey genetics as a cause for turkeys tanking, it does make us think that moving the needle towards greater genetic work is important and timely. My collaborator on this project, Dr. Phil Lavretsky, is now also part of the Turkey DNA Project with Dr. Mike Chamberlain. All a great step in starting to unravel what extent turkey genetics play in the role of wild turkey decline. For now, folks, that's it on turkeys, but stay tuned, and thanks for tuning in for our turkey bonus episode. Thanks for listening, and may your spring mornings be filled with gobbles.